Welcome. I'm Jan Edwards, and I'm doing an interview in a series of interviews that are with creative people, people who have gone through transformations, people who have interesting events and creations to share with the world. And today I'm happy to be here with m.a.Richter. Am I saying your last name correctly?
Yes.
Okay, cool.
Although it's perfectly all right to say Richter.
Really? Because you want that effect of that rich sound in there?
Can't hurt.
Can't hurt, right? And Mark is an author, and we met last year, and he has a very interesting book that came out last year that was published, and it is called Mystic Prince. And I'm happy to be here with you. Welcome.
I'm glad to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. So if someone were to ask you in a nutshell, what's this book about? What would you say?
It's about personal development and handling abuse.
And what abuse?
Handling. Dealing with abuse from the perspective of someone who's not abused, working with an abused person, and how that person deals with their abuse.
Fascinating. And this is a fantasy?
Yes.
This book? Okay.
Yes.
And how did you get the idea for this plot?
My original idea was just to write a nice adventure story with people that would be realistic. That was, let's say it was over 30 years ago. And I'd spent a lot of time, that was before I knew anything about how to write books.
Okay.
And about 10 years ago, I got involved with a writing critique group. And they pointed out to me a number of aspects of writing I had never thought of. Okay. And they helped me whip the book into much better shape. Okay. I still sat on it for a long time, but 2 years ago, I had COVID. And I was in a coma for 25 days. And when I came out of it, I was thinking, I really ought to do something with that book because it's never going to get published if I don't.
Wow.
So I got me an editor who loved the book and went through a great deal of effort to help me get it to publication, most of which she threw in for free. Oh, the editing was not free, but she helped me put it into shape to put it on Amazon as Kindle and paperback. And she's given me a lot of really good advice.
Oh my goodness. Wow. That's pretty moving. Yeah. You came out of that coma knowing that you had a different clarity about your life and what you were doing.
Oh yeah. Well, I've written 7 novels from this story on forward. Originally it was more than 7, but I cut them down and put them into decent shape. So now it's 7. And I'm hoping that at least the first 3 will sell well enough to keep me going.
Okay.
I'm not so concerned about making money from the book. I just want to get the story out there because all the reviews I've gotten so far, the formal ones that have been posted and the ones from people that I personally sold the book to, they all love it.
Okay, so I'm going to read a couple of these reviews. I had originally planned to read just a chapter at a time, but I couldn't put Mystic Prince down. The author drew me into the story as the characters became more complex and their journey more interesting. The story combines unique mystical abilities and imagery along a road of discovery as the characters build on their friendship and share some fun and dangerous adventures. There are surprises and plot twists along the way, and the ending begs for a sequel. You won't be disappointed. Wow, that's a great one.
That was the first one that was posted by someone that I didn't realize she posted it. Oh, and then she said, oh, I reviewed your book, and I went and looked, and I was, oh my, wow. Somebody really liked this book. I think she was the second reviewer.
Okay. And with that said, I'm getting this idea in my head. Did the writing of this book actually change you personally in some way? The way you look at yourself or your talent or your purpose or direction?
Yes, I've dealt with abuse for a lot of my life, not always as the abused one. And when I came out of that coma, I realized this has to change. I can't just sit back and let these things go. And publishing this and dealing with the subject of abuse, interpersonal abuse for the most part, it's important to me that the word gets out that abuse doesn't work, just like violence doesn't work. It just creates a deadly spiral that gets worse and worse until someone either says enough or they leave.
Wow. So this is a pretty impactful story then. This is not just some fantasy. Give us a little tiny bit of a plot without giving the whole thing away.
At the beginning of the book, we discover that the main character, his name is Kyle, he is returning from a mission for his brother, who's the king, and he finds out that the viceroy he left behind has usurped his throne. And on his way into the city to see the king, a street urchin steals his signet ring, which is something that no one has ever been able to do before. And when he looks at her spirit, her soul essence, he's stunned by how beautiful it is, even though there's a lot of pain in it. And he wants to do something for her to see if he can do some good for her, in addition to reclaiming his throne.
And this story has a happy ending?
Mostly, this story
Putting
is,
you on the spot.
there's more to the story, but at the end of the book, there's a little zinger to invite people to move on to the next book, which is going to be coming out this year, and I'm going to have a much bigger launch for it so I can hopefully make a bigger splash.
Okay. Wow. And so this series of books, they're all related like sequels or not?
The first three are basically one continuous story.
Okay. And you published the first and you're about to publish the second. And then the third?
The third will be coming after that. The third needs work. When I rewrote a lot of this about 10 years ago, largely as a lot of it was from scratch for a number of reasons. And the third book has changed dramatically.
Why is that?
There were a number of things that don't work in the way the story has developed and the development of the characters. I wanted to have an ending that fits the main characters, and it didn't. It will when I'm finished with it.
Got it. Wow. And that book critiquing group that you were in, I'm sure just really helped you in ways that you hadn't imagined.
Tremendously.
And are you still a member of that group?
No, they were in another county where I used to live, and since I moved and two of the other authors have dropped out of it, there's only one person left in it from then. And she and I have very different ideas of how critiquing should be done.
Okay. Okay. Well, it served its purpose while it was out there for you.
Yes.
Right. Okay. And what made you decide to choose a fantasy genre instead of maybe, I don't know, self-help or drama or, you know?
I've always been a lover of fantasy. I grew up on fairy tales and the Narnia series, and then my great love, The Lord of the Rings, which I read. It took my mom 6 months to convince me to start reading The Hobbit. And I couldn't get through the first chapter. It was just too much poetry and a lot of verbiage. And after 6 months of it, I thought, well, if it's really that good, I should be able to start chapter 2. I read it all the way through, back to back, 3 or 4 times in a row. And then I went back and said, is there any more to this story? And my mom handed me The Fellowship of the Ring. And I read The Lord of the Rings 18 times in a row, back to back.
Whoa. Wow. How old were you? Was this?
I started when I was 12.
Oh my gosh. And so I've never been a follower of fantasy. What is it that you think the average fantasy lover is called to? Is it something personal in their lives that they want to kind of escape from in a fantasy for a while? Or is it just the style is, what do you think it is?
I think part of it is escapist, but pretty much any fiction is. And I've been thinking a lot about that recently. In fantasy, one of the things the author has to do is create a whole world or series of worlds and make them believable and make characters that fit. But at the same time, if it's completely escapist and removed from reality, who cares? So there have to be some real issues involved in the story. And I cover a lot, not just abuse, but slavery is one issue, how people interact with one another, what they decide is the best solution to a problem. Some people think the best solution to getting rid of the villain is to kill him. And I was wondering if it wouldn't be possible to present a story where that's not necessary. We can do something to have it end more pleasantly than with another revenge death. There's also something that I put in the book that I don't know if people will pick up on. It's very subtle. The words good and bad do not appear anywhere in the story.
I love it. No wonder I'm interviewing you. Oh my God, I love it. So you've dropped judgment references.
To that extent, yes. Like they say, fair morning instead of good morning. But yeah, the idea I wanted to get rid of is the overtones of judgment that good and bad have. There are people who are wicked or evil,
yes,
but that's kind of more of an extreme, and not too many people fit that description. The villain definitely does. And even when you find out who they are and why they're doing what they do, there is some sympathetic element in it, which is true in life. There are always things that we can see in other people that we can identify with, that we can hopefully empathize with, and do some good, bring some benefit to the world.
Absolutely. I totally agree. Have you always felt that way, or is this something that's come with maturity for you?
Definitely came with maturity. When I was a kid, there was a lot of good and bad, and I was bullied. I became a bully. I got over being a bully, then I got back into it. It's life. Things change.
Yes.
Hopefully they improve as they change.
Hopefully.
Yes.
Yeah. Even if it's a long, steady incline of improvement with dips going back down once in a while, hopefully it's a steady, right?
Yes.
So this next review, the title of it, or the top main line, I didn't understand it. Maybe you can help give me clarity. It says, don't let the cover art fool you. Why would someone say that?
I got the impression from that review that the cover art was too generic.
Oh.
There wasn't anything that was really compelling about it. I do like the scepter through the crown. I think the design is beautiful. I am working with another book cover designer to see what we can do. And the back cover is not as effective as it could be.
Okay, I get it. So this person went on to say, it's been a while since I read a fantasy novel and the cover art left me with doubts. Oh, okay. But I'm glad I picked this one to get back into the genre. It was very cleverly written. The author maintains the illusion of another time and place extremely well. And I felt transported to that place where the adventure was happening. I look forward to a sequel. I just hope the wait is not too long. Oh, that's awesome.
I have no idea who wrote that. It's someone who bought the book on Amazon and reviewed it.
Yeah. So what was your favorite aspect of writing this story and developing it?
I come from a background of fantasy role-playing games that saved my sanity when I was in the shipyards while I was in the Navy many, many years ago. And I really enjoyed it, but I didn't like the particular style or styles of magic that were in those games. So I decided to invent 4. And they are somewhat interrelated. There's one that's sort of the grandfather of them all that the rest are derived from, but they all work a little bit differently. And the challenge to me there was to make it consistent and somewhat believable, even though, of course, it is fantasy. I also like the medieval style of world because it's not so advanced, and I can have a little more flexibility in how I present the people and how they interact and even the fighting.
Okay. And back to these magic, I like this question. So is there any one of those 4 types of magic that might actually be similar to what's possible in reality?
I like to think that the kind of mystical disciplines that Kyle exercises have a basis in fundamentally in ESP.
Oh, okay.
But I took them farther, and a lot of them have to do with the influence on energy. And we're finding out more and more that thought does influence energy, and energy influences thought. And I like the idea that we can use that to our benefit and to help other people. I know a lot of energy healers that are incredibly effective. In fact, I know one who was a physicist, and she started studying vibrations, and that's how she does her healings, and they're really good.
Yes. So this book would not only be appealing to those fantasy followers, but also to people in the energy fields or who are wanting to learn more about energy or kind of wanting to, touch that world, I think. And those people, like you said in the beginning, victims of abuse or abusers of some kind. So you got a wide range of audiences that would be drawn to this book.
I hope so.
Good job.
Thank you.
And what was the biggest challenge that you would say in writing it? Or maybe 2 big challenges?
When I originally wrote these stories, I kind of wrote them as documenting something else. They weren't particularly emotionally compelling at all. They were just telling the story. And I wanted to make it more of a personal storyteller type of approach, such that you can empathize with the characters from whose point of view the story is being told. It's what's called a third-person omniscient perspective, but each chapter or section of a chapter is written from a particular character's perspective. And it's very clear whose perspective that part of the story is written from. It makes a difference because there are some things that are just more effective if Kyle is the one whose point of view you're looking through, and there are a lot of things that he does that are way more effective if the person from whose perspective it is told is watching this and seeing what's going on. Because they don't know what he's doing, but it looks really neat.
Love it. And is this story something that is really geared toward the adult reader, or would there be, what's the age range, the lowest, I would say?
This book, Mystic Prince, is safe for pretty much anyone over 12.
Okay.
The second and third books are getting into a lot more mature subjects, and I would say adults.
Okay.
It's not erotic by any means, but it is more intimate.
The theme, maybe?
The theme and some of the scenes, yes.
Yeah, and the scenes. Okay. And after this series is complete, this series of how many will be in the series? You said you were over 30 years writing 7?
I've done 3 for sure. The 4 that follow that are going to need massive rewriting because I was kind of just writing for the heck of it and not being particularly careful about it. And it needs work. In fact, it needs enough work that I'm not sure I'll recognize some of the parts of this story.
Yes. And
But
maybe you don't need to worry about that right now. You just be with these. And then who knows what's possible for the future for you.
Yes.
Yes. And where is this book available?
Currently, it is available on Amazon as Kindle if you want to read on an electronic device, which is where I do all my editing.
Okay.
And it's also available in paperback. The paperback is a nice, big, thick one. I didn't realize it was as big as it turned out to be. But I like it, and for people who like reading paper book, it's a good choice.
Yeah, that's me. I don't like reading. I mean, unless it's short or I'm doing an audio or a video. If it's a book, it's got to be in paper. So, but
this is not short. It's 355 pages.
So you're talking like maybe a 2-inch thick?
Oh, no, it's about an inch.
An inch. Okay. Okay. And so what one thing would you like to leave the viewers with to let them know how special this book is?
My best friend had some preview glimpses of the story before it got published, and he gave me the Game of Thrones books, volume 1 and 2, and said, you should read these. Your book's a lot like him. And I went, well, maybe someday, but I didn't want that to influence me, although I have seen the entire Game of Thrones series. And the one thing I don't like doing is, to his credit, he writes a great story, but his characters are 100% disposable. And I don't want people reading my book to feel that way, that the characters are disposable. And like I said, killing left and right is not a solution to anything except getting rid of characters. I'd rather make a point and bring the characters around if that's at all possible. Some there are, some there aren't.
I love it. I love it. A fantasy about a mystic prince, no disposable characters. Something a 12-year-old and an 80-year-old can read, and real life stuff in it. Well, I enjoyed interviewing you about this wonderful book, and I look forward to catching up with what's on the next agenda and whenever that comes out. So
I'll let you know.
All right. Thanks again, Mark Richter.
Thank you, Jen. It's been good talking with you. You too.
You're welcome. Thank you all. Take care.